Hey, Shalom Akim, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Kwakadash, Barakatam. Double honors and salutations to the elders and apostles of great mystery and rule well, to the Akim Akwa, try to folk unto the earth, holding on in sincerity and in truth, to the gents of mind, to the gospel of the Lord and Mashiach Yahushai, this Brahmanasha, DC Camp, short lesson for the hopeful elect. Yes, this drama of these bug out Christians, man, that think that the word of the Lord can be manipulated to boost a foundation of lies. They're just circling the drain. The falsehoods, that these so-called churches have been pushing for centuries. It's gotten a lot of people messed up, psychologically and mentally, and now they still want to hold on to that mindset. They want to hold on to that power structure. It's basically a spirit of hostility towards freedom. It's a spirit of corruption, all right, that we have to deal with. And it's just what the Lord Hamashiach Yahushua has warned us about, man. That's why during the time of slavery, Esau used the scriptures to manipulate the captives on the plantation. And when that model, that power of plantation Christianity, is pushed into the modern world, what you have is just chaos every single way, man. So Matthew chapter 7 and 6 says, give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. And that's what this bug out that showed up to the camp last week, the DC camp, the camp of the Heralds. That's what he was trying to do. He showed up to the main camp. It just shows you that the Lord allows these events, these situations, these incidents to happen to expose the falsehoods of plantation Christianity. The falsehoods of a half-baked doctrine. The falsehood of deceit. So you can't reason, with dumb dogs. You cannot reason with folly. That's why it's important, to approach things with a spirit tempered with wisdom. Yeah, because we've dealt with this. The apostles been dealing with this for several decades, man. No matter how simple the precepts are, folks will just find a way to ignore it. Why? It's because the Most High doesn't want to deal with them. That's why it keeps on sending them down the aisle of confusion, the aisles of falsehood, down the rabbit hole of self-destruction, the rabbit hole of confusion. Yeah, so it's the power of the Lord, man. Some cannot be. Not every Israelite is convertible. Some are meant to be cast away. Some are just there for being there. That's why you have to pray in the Spirit of the Lord, that you do not fall by the wayside, man. This parable of the sower is no joke. You see how the wisdom that's been imparted by the Lord upon His elect is not available to 2/3 of our people, man. It's like there's a barrier, there's a gulf, there's a big wall of separation, a big wall of petition that no matter how hard they try, they cannot get it. You know, they cannot get it. It's like the spirit within them is just an opposing entity, an opposing force. So the book of Romans chapter 11 verse 7 says, what then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. So that's the Lord showing His power of selection, His power of discrimination. Alright, this knowledge is for the elect, it's for the chosen few. It's for the grain of salt, it's for that cluster of grape that the Lord has reserved for Himself. Yeah, so the elect don't have to struggle to receive this knowledge. It's a gift from Yahweh Shimam Shai. So when you debate, with all these so-called Calvinists and all these Trinitarians, man, it's just an element of frustration you have to deal with patiently, man. Yeah, because you have to remember, no matter how many scriptures you bring out, they cannot be convinced. You cannot convert a demon, man. That's just one thing. You cannot convert a demon. That's just what the Lord has made possible, man. The spirit of confusion has no place within the temple of the Lord. Within the sanctuary of the Lord, there is no room for the spirit of confusion. There is no room for the spirit of chaos. That's why they cannot get it. No matter how hard they try to study, to converse and debate, they just cannot get it. It's because the Lord is the one in control, man. So the Lord has to expose, the falsehood that's out there by bringing it closer, to the light, so it can be seen. So a lot of people are going to have to learn that this knowledge of the gospel is not for everyone. It's only for the spirits that the Lord have chosen, to bear the message. So now you read from the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2, you read verse 24 to 26. As the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness instructing those that oppose themselves. If Yahweh Shimon Shah peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth. Yeah, so the Lord is not giving them the opportunity to acknowledge the truth, in totality. They still have to hold on to lies no matter how much truth is presented to them. They're going to hold on to all these false narratives. They're going to hold on to fables. They're going to hold on to doctrines of devils, doctrines of deception. So that's the reason why it's very necessary to, keep it at the front of your mind, man, that you're not just dealing with people, you're dealing with, spiritual influences that cannot be subdued. No matter how you try, man, because the Most High has created that barrier. When the demon, has engulfed the soul of someone and they're in opposition to the gospel, and the Lord prevents them from seeing the light of this gospel, there's nothing you can do to convert them, and they are irredeemable. Remember that, irredeemable. When a person is irredeemable, you cannot reason with them. All you can do is just reject them. All right. And then verse 26, 2 Timothy 2:26, and that they may recover themselves, but out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will. So it's only for those that can be delivered, by the power of the Lord. Those that are destined for deliverance, those that have been rejected, you cannot do anything to convince them. There's nothing you can do to convince the gainsayers. So let's get that. So this is from the book of Titus 1:9. What does it say? Holding fast the faithful word as he had been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers, right? And that's just a group that can be redeemed. Not all Israel can be redeemed this time around. And they just have to bear the brunt of the Most High's condemnation. So verse 10 says, for there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. So eventually the Lord will have to put a stop to this madness that is moving like a raging fire, causing people to lose their minds, causing instability, bringing about chaos. So the Lord has to, make it clear sooner or later, man, that He's not dealing with them, man. He's just using them as an example of what He cannot accept, what He's not willing to compromise with. So that's just evidence of the Most High's rejection, man. When the Most High rejects a soul, there's nothing they can do to gravitate towards the gospel. They cannot gravitate towards the light. The scriptures tell you that, man, because when you read the book of Isaiah 44:6, it makes it clear, it's only for the wise that the Lord HaMashiach Yahushai is dealing with, man. The simplicity of this gospel, it helps you to look at things spiritually. That's what it is, man. The Spirit of the Lord, when the Spirit of the Lord is upon you, you begin to see things He wants you to see them. Look at this. Isaiah 44:6. Thus said the Lord, the King of Israel, alright, and His Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first and I am the last, and beside me there is no power. What does that mean? Who is it referring to? So when you look at it clearly, man, it's talking about Mashiach Yahushai. That's just what it is. He is the Alpha and the Omega. The Lord, Yahweh, He has no beginning and He has no end. And what does He also have for Hamashiach Yahushai? He's the firstborn of all creation. He created Yahushai as a single entity beneath His authority. And what did He also do? He gave all power to the Lord Hamashiach Yahushai to create, according to His blueprint. So that's just a synopsis, man. This knowledge, it's deep, it's necessary, but for those that cannot accept it, man, they're just going to drown in the era of confusion. So you just have to move things where they need to be. Put the puzzles where they fit. But those that don't have a proper mind anchored to the word of the Lord, they're just going to be moving around in confusion, stumbling in darkness. That's not the way of the elect. So that's why you have to trust in the Lord, so you do not become a pariah. So that's why we have to get this Isaiah chapter 8 and 14. All right. So get that real quick. Isaiah 8 and 14. What does it say? It said, "And he shall be for a sanctuary." Actually, read verse 13. Isaiah 8 and 13. "Sanctify the Lord of hosts Himself, and let Him be your fear, and let Him be your dread. And He shall be for a sanctuary, and for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense, to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and for a snare, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem." And verse 15 says, "And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken." Yep, so that's just what it is, man. This knowledge is no joke, man. You have to let the Lord, guide you in the direction He wants you to go, man. A lot of people, touch the Bible, they read the Bible, but the Spirit of the Lord is not with them to receive it, to receive the true meaning of this gospel, to receive the hidden wisdom. That's why it's necessary that you continue to pray that the Spirit of the Lord, the Ruach HaKodesh, continues to dwell with you, man, because it's a very, very horrible experience, man, to live in confusion, to live in darkness, proclaiming ideologies that are not approved by the Lord, in this ministry, man. So you could see that we're getting close to the end of Esau's rulership, and all this chaos, that's in these churches is going to spill over to the streets. You're going to have more debates and all that. So that's the bottom line of this lesson, man. It's like a never-ending debate, man. The spirit of error. Yeah, man, the spirit of error is just it's not gonna have its way. It's not gonna have its way. That's why it's necessary, to learn to cut your losses, man. You don't have that energy to be going back and forth, with lost souls. All right. First John chapter 4 and 6. We are of Yahweh Bashim Shai Bashim Kakadash, and He knoweth us. All right. Yahweh Bashim Shai heareth us. He that is not of Yahweh Bashim Shai Bashim Kakadash heareth not us. Hereby know we the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. Yep. So that's just what it is, man. You have to deal according to what the Lord has presented before you. So yeah, we just have to be careful. You have to keep a watch. Upon our souls, man. Our faith is tied to the wisdom of the Lord. The spiritual foundation that is laid before us. We have to adopt it. We have to embrace it. You have to put on the whole armor so that we'll be able to protect ourselves against the wiles of the devil. So that's the bottom line of this lesson. That's the conclusion of this lesson of Baratazar. We put up some more to edify the church, the hopeful elect. Shalom.